For more on this monumental event, we're joined by the F1 journalist and content creator, Alice Holloway. Alice, welcome along. Wasn't it? It was such an emotional moment, wasn't it?
Hi, Alison. Great to be here. Yeah, absolutely. Really emotional moment for Hamilton. Something he's been trying to do since he joined Ferrari last year, and it was a lot of hard work last year. But it's just fantastic for the fans and for the sport to see that all kind of come to fruition now.
How significant do you think it is? Um, Not just sort of the context of his career legacy, but also Ferrari's recent history.
Yeah, I mean, on Hamilton's note there, just to touch on it, massive for him. You know, it's not a secret, and I think Sebastian Vettel put it best when he said everybody is secretly a Ferrari fan. And I think when Hamilton joined Ferrari last year, that really kind of also came out of the blue, but really did show that. And yeah, in terms of for Ferrari, it's been a long slog for them to get to where they are. They've had flashes and kind of moments of greatness, which haven't really paid off to either be fully championship contention or kind of seem like flash in the pan moments. So to have this, Ferrari's kind of been building to this for the last couple of races now as well. They had 8 upgrades they brought. It's fantastic to see this weekend that those upgrades have not only been successful, but managed to get them that win that they have been striving for so long as well.
Yeah, there are definitely some really beautiful stories out there about him sort of dreaming about this moment as a boy. So definitely have a look at those. Um, what do you think are the key factors behind the win? So whether it was his performance, race strategy, car development, obviously it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, as I just mentioned, obviously all those upgrades that Ferrari brought for this weekend were imperative to them being in the position they were in. Hamilton actually was quite unbalanced with the car at the beginning of the weekend. So to kind of see him go from feeling uncomfortable to getting the victory is great. I think a lot of the discussion comes down to the timing of the virtual safety car that came out when Fernando Alonso retired from the race. And there's an argument to say it definitely helped because it enabled Hamilton to take his final pit stop, not lose track position, and importantly, not lose as much time as he would have done. But a lot of the debate and discourse from within the Formula One world is that without that, even still, the pace of that Ferrari and the upgrades that they brought for Hamilton this weekend and the position he was in, he just seems so on top of it. So, yeah, I think it's driver skill, upgrades for sure, and also you can't forget that virtual safety car did help, even if arguably it wasn't really that important in the end anyway.
Yeah. What impact do you think the result could have on Ferrari's ambitions and confidence moving forward?
Definitely, this is a boost to the confidence they'll need. As I mentioned, Ferrari's been kind of the team that's been almost there for the last at least 5, 6 seasons. They've seemed like they kind of get something together, and then another team's either got the regulations better, a bit like the beginning of this season, where Mercedes were clearly ahead of everybody in the engine game or the power unit train game, but Ferrari just seemed to be so close, but not quite there. So this, with the upgrades that they've brought, that's going to be a massive confidence boost. With even though Charles Leclerc, Hamilton's teammate, didn't manage to finish the race with a I believe it was a hybrid suspect hybrid failure was why he retired from the race. Even still, both of those cars looked incredibly strong through qualifying, looked really strong in the race. So Ferrari's confidence has to be boosted on this. They have to feel like, almost finally that relief of that step in the right direction. And they're still not quite there. I still believe that Mercedes are the strongest car on the grid, but this is definitely a good step in the right direction for Ferrari, and they will take this into the next few races, into the summer races, into the European season.
I bet they will. Psychology is such an important part of any sport. And we noticed that Hamilton had admitted to some doubts about whether he could still do the job at the pinnacle of the sport that he once dominated. What do you make of all that?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting discourse actually around Hamilton and his kind of approach to the season. Formula One obviously had its month break or forced month break a couple of months ago, which saw kind of all the drivers get that time off and a little bit of time to sit, think, and reflect. And when Hamilton returned for the Miami Grand Prix, which was the first Grand Prix back after that, he was very keen to say, like, I've really stripped back. I've really kind of like stepped away from the simulator, stepped away from all the data and the technology and all these fancy things that Formula One kind of brags to have, and was like, I've come back to my roots and gone back to what it is. And, his sentiment off the back of the weekend is remember who you are. It's kind of been his buzz line from the weekend. And I think that's just sometimes athletes across all different sports, if you get too caught up in the media, if you get too caught up in the story and the pressure of, if you have been very successful in the past but can't seem to replicate that success, people do start doubting. And we're very good at bringing these wonderful athletes down. So I think it's great for him to have taken that time away, and it definitely looks like the reset for him has worked wonders. And as a fan of the sport, you can only hope that continues moving forwards, because we want this great championship fight. And Hamilton now P2, and like a very strong P2 in the drivers' championship standings as well, really has put himself in a strong place to look at the rest of the season.
I'm just curious, obviously you follow it so closely, and I wondered if you were surprised by the victory, because he did call last season a nightmare and called himself just useless. And obviously this is going to really change the way he thinks about things mentally.
Yeah, I think had this have been the first race of the 26th season, I would have been much more surprised. But if you look at Hamilton's performance over even just the last few races, he got his best result, P2, and then he matched that in Monaco. The first one in Canada, sorry, then matched that in Monaco. He just seemed, since they came back, as I said, from that break, just seemed to be in a much better place, a much better understanding with the car, and just kind of much more confident in himself again. I think that's something he lost a lot last season. Lewis Hamilton who's confident in his own performance is a dangerous Lewis Hamilton to any of his competitors, because, as you said, the psychology of it is almost as important as your driving talent. And when he can believe in himself and believe in the team and believe in the car, he's a very, very strong competitor.
And speaking of which, of course, psychology, everything comes into a sportsman. So do we need to talk about his girlfriend, Kim Kardashian? I mean, presumably she's been a huge positive in this, in terms of driving and also mentality.
It certainly seems to be aiding him in the correct way. There's been a lot of chat about this online, actually. A lot of people, messaging Kim Kardashian saying, whatever you're doing, keep it up, because he seems to have got his mojo back a little bit. But yeah, I think attributing just the one factor to his success is probably maybe toying on the headlines a little bit. It's a great story, and like I said, clearly she's given him some confidence, given him a maybe part of this reset he's had, just to kind of realign his perspective a little bit. But yeah, there's a lot more to it than just a new girlfriend that's going to attribute to his success.
Of course. It's Ferrari's first win since Mexico in October 24. Why do you think that they've fallen so far behind in that period?
I think pre-2026, there was a lot, the regulations hadn't changed. And it's one of those things with Formula One, that if you can get ahead of the regulations, if you can get on top of them, if you can kind of have the edge before the start, or when the regulations first come in, then you hold on to that advantage throughout a lot of that regulation period. We saw it with Red Bull, we saw it with Mercedes throughout their dominance in the 2014 period, when that new regulation cycle started. And I just think Ferrari's always been playing catch up before this year. Now, obviously, this year started. They had a fantastic launch system that really gave them an edge at the beginning of races. They had this very innovative new rear wing that also seems to have given them an advantage, because other teams we now see trying to replicate that. So I think this year Ferrari's just managed to get, I don't think they're the best. I still think Mercedes comes out top on this kind of regulations race, if you will. But they're much more in the competitive fight than they have been. And that really has been a lot of the contributing factor why they've been in the conversation since the start of the season. Prior to this, it was Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz driving the car very well and kind of out-driving the car, getting it to a position where it necessarily shouldn't have been, but was, because of their talent, the strategy, the racecraft. Whereas now Ferrari are in a position where they are competitive, and it's almost kind of the conversation flips on itself now, where it's, if Ferrari aren't competitive, what went wrong?
Yeah. Alex, I just want to throw some stats out there, because there's some great ones here. That Hamilton's only the fourth driver in his 40s to win an F1 race since 1958. And also, with George Russell and Lando Norris also on the podium, that was the first all-British podium since 1968. Impressive stats there.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. Another one for you is he's the 41st driver to win a race with Ferrari. So quite an exclusive club he's now entered himself into, and definitely going to cement himself in the history books with the Tifosi fans.
So let's wrap it up with the question that the question on everyone's lips. Can he realistically challenge for the title this season?
I definitely think there's a conversation for it. Obviously, Mercedes still have that edge, but what we're starting to see with Mercedes is potentially some gremlins coming into their package. Even the customer cars also suffering mechanical failures. That's the second retirement Mercedes have had this season in comparison to Ferrari's one. So I definitely think he's well placed. I still think it's too early to really have that conversation. Obviously, we're only 7 races into the championship, but having got his mojo back in the way he has, having now pushed himself to a comfortable P2 in the standings, to write him off would definitely be a mistake.
Absolutely. Alice Holloway, thank you so much for those insights.